Editors make tough calls every day. Some are harder than others. And a few, those that make us confront the very worst of humanity, they shake your soul. Manny García, editor of the Austin American-Statesman, was listening to the TV in May when reports emerged that a gunman had entered Robb Elementary in Uvalde, Texas. For 77 minutes, law enforcement gathered in the school hallways, fully armed, fully shielded, while inside the classroom, terrified children called 911. Agents finally stormed the room, and they said they killed the gunman. By then, he had fatally shot 19 fourth graders and 2 teachers. No one can know for certain how many lives would have been saved if police had acted sooner. Texas DPS praised the officers' heroism. The Texas governor said officers ran toward gunfire to save lives. Of course, this wasn't true. And when the media demanded records and answers, requests were delayed or rejected. The community lost trust in the authorities and their versions of events. Yet Uvalde and America shouldn't have had to pick among unreliable narratives, and they wouldn't have to, thanks to the Austin American-Statesman. There was a hallway camera in Robb Elementary, and Statesman reporter Tony Plohetski got the video on a Sunday night in July and immediately called Manny and others. "I knew what we had," Manny told me. "Regardless of whether you're a parent or not, it just impacts you in your soul." Manny would publish the video, but carefully and thoughtfully. Plohetski, he described to me the conversation. "Are we going to show the gunman walking in? Why or why not? Are we going to air the gunfire? The screams, are we going to air them? I think when you are actively debating whether or not you're going to publish the sound of children screaming in a school, I just can't think of a more daunting decision." The Statesman left the gunfire in the video. They removed the sound of the children. They did not show any victims. Manny knew the video would cause more pain to the families, and for that he was sorry. But he also knew the public had a right to know what happened, and the truth could save lives by showing the massive mistakes made that day. 2 weeks later, when a Texas House committee released its shooting report, it was available initially only in English to a heavily Spanish-speaking community. Manny knew we could do better and got the entire report translated. Then he and others drove a little over 3 hours to Uvalde to personally deliver Spanish-language copies of the report to stores, churches, and the police department. They also left a stack at Robb Elementary. To this day, Texas officials still refuse to release the public records. Thank goodness we have determined journalists. A coalition of media companies, including Gannett, which owns the Statesman, has filed a lawsuit against Texas DPS demanding the release of the records. A hearing is set for March 8th. Manny will be there. Journalists cover tough stories every day. Some are harder than others, and some will shake your soul. For those, thank goodness for local newsrooms like the Austin American-Statesman, and for principled, compassionate editors like Manny García, the Benjamin C. Bradlee Editor of the Year.
Good evening. So Uvalde, our coverage is also, it's a labor of love and tears. So once again, good evening, buenas noches. I'm honored to join you tonight. I want to thank the National Press Foundation for the Benjamin C. Bradlee Editor of the Year Award. 33 years ago, I started my journalism career listening to a police scanner, and here we are. I want to recognize some of my friends, family, and coworkers who would join me tonight. Amelie Nash, Senior Vice President for Local News, USA Today Network, who nominated me. Maribel Perez Wadsworth, my friend and former president of Gannett Media and publisher of USA Today. Thank you both for trusting me in 2021 to come and lead the Statesman. Mizell Stewart III, my former boss and now CEO of Emerging Leaders, you have modeled the way as a leader for me. To my beautiful daughter Madison, who's my rock, and my lovely wife Elizabeth, and lastly for God for this journey. So let me share that Uvalde is one of the greatest failures in law enforcement history. As Nicole was saying, on May 24th, a troubled teenager armed with an assault rifle walked into Robb Elementary He killed 19 fourth graders and their 2 teachers. Almost immediately, from the Secretary of Homeland Security to the Texas governor, including federal, state, and local authorities, spun a narrative of police heroics and bravery, except it wasn't true. That false narrative began to crumble because reporters never let up. Authorities acknowledged mistakes. The governor said he was misled, but still, no one took ownership. No one could truly fathom the level of failure. That is until my colleague, Statesman investigative reporter Tony Plohetski, obtained the security footage. It was shocking, heartbreaking, hard to watch. Our managing editor, Courtney Sebesta, who's here with us tonight too, worked with Tony, and together with the leadership at USA Today, we created a slow and deliberative process to understand the gravity and know of what we had obtained. And thus we began navigating what I call as ethical and editorial decisions stacked upon one after the other. So they range from the decision to leave out the screams of children, one of the most haunting moments of our careers, the decision to leave in the sound of gunfire, importance because 48 minutes into the footage, the gunman resumed shooting in the classroom. Still, no officers storm inside. The decision to publish the entire video, including the 77-minute delay by law enforcement to end the siege, with our local news partner, KView. A decision we made in hopes of tamping conspiracy theorists who claim mass shootings are staged. We knew the impact of families who had lost children. We were balancing that against exposing how scores of heavily armed officers who swore an oath to protect and serve stood around. The response to publication was immediate. We were criticized by many, including many of the Uvalde families who were hurting. We also received death threats. Some hoped my children would be killed too. We were lauded also for being transparent with our decision making. I heard from readers, including current and former law enforcement officers, who thanked us for exposing this extraordinary failure. Publishing our work was also critical because the state had created a special legislative committee to investigate this very tragedy. Much of its work was conducted in secrecy. A group of Texas legislators, also digging into the response, even signed non-disclosure agreements to review investigative files. So think about that for a moment. One of the greatest tragedies that happened, non-disclosure agreements were signed. Uvalde is majority Hispanic. A language other than English is spoken in more than 53% of homes. When a special legislative committee I just mentioned released its final report, it was not in Spanish. Despite Uvalde families asking for the report in Spanish. The committee said it would be translated and ready in the coming weeks. The mayor of Uvalde said 2 weeks. Again, simply not true. That's when what I call the United Nations of journalism jumped into action. So this Cuban journalist texted a Venezuelan journalist, Teresa Frontado, my former managing editor at El Nuevo Herald, who's here too. She's a translator you trust with such an endeavor. We teamed up with a Cuban Basque journalist, Romina Ruiz from USA Today, who pinged a copy editor friend, Sonia, who's in Mexico City, and the work began. A cadre of bilingual journalists across USA Today, our USA Today network, worked throughout the night to finish the translation, including every footnote. We finished in 3 days. Stupid me, I planned to print several hundred copies at a local printer. That's when Nicole Carroll said, Manny, we own printing presses. Right? So 10,000 copies later, 2 pallets of newspapers arrived in Uvalde. Our Statesman team personally delivered them to those who needed them. A true public service. I've never been prouder to be a journalist and part of the Statesman family in this organization. Finally, I got to close that my career would not be possible if not for my brave grandparents and parents. They made the brave decision when I was an infant to flee communist Cuba. There isn't a day that I don't think about their sacrifice, and this award is for them. Again, thank you to the National Press Foundation for this honor. Thank you.